As you can see from this quote, Henry Ford, the guy who started Ford Motors, understood self-efficacy. He understood that your belief in yourself is the foundation of your success. As an emerging leader, you'll want to understand how self-efficacy develops naturally, and more importantly, how to develop self-efficacy deliberately. That's right. There are specific things that you can do that will help you develop your belief in yourself. We talked about human agency as the ability to make choices. Well, this lesson is all about making choices that help you achieve your goals, and hopefully, in doing so, start to see how you can facilitate the success of people around you. It's probably worth taking a minute to just recall what we mean when we talk about self-efficacy. So, when you think about people with high self-efficacy, how would you respond to these 3 questions? Here's a quick reminder of the characteristics of people with high self-efficacy from our previous lesson. Were your descriptions close to these? Belief in yourself is not something that you're born with. It's a way of thinking about yourself that emerges over time. It starts when you're a baby, when you realize that your behaviors create an effect in the real world, whether it's the sound that happens when you bang on a toy or the fact that a person shows up when you scream. Over time, as you grow and have social experiences and learning experiences, you started to have an internal representation of yourself as a person and expectations about what you could or couldn't do. Albert Bandura, the psychologist who invented the concept of efficacy, identified the 4 main ingredients that contribute to the development of a sense of efficacy. Now, I call these ingredients because when you combine these things in the right quantities for a specific skill, you feel more able to do it. On the other hand, when one of these ingredients is lacking or negative, it can take away from that belief. The first ingredient is inspiration. Can you remember when you wanted to be a pilot? Along the way, you were probably amazed when you watched airplanes, and I bet you watched videos on the internet of pilots flying. Seeing other people do something that you like or think is interesting is motivating. And if that person is like you in some way, like they're your age, or perhaps you're a woman and you see a female pilot, this is even more motivating because your brain says, hey, she's like me and she can do that, so maybe I can do that as well. The next ingredient is mastery experience, and this is somewhat obvious. When you do your first solo flight, you say, wow, I did that. I'm competent to fly solo. You get a huge boost of confidence in your ability to overcome what could be a very stressful situation. And your brain doesn't just recognize, hey, I can fly solo. It recognizes that you can take on things that are complex, things that can be stressful, and you can overcome them. So if you can do that, you'll have confidence in your ability to do other things. Success breeds success. Social persuasion is what people tell you you can do. Now, we saw the negative side of social persuasion when someone told that little girl she couldn't draw. But positive messages, encouraging messages from teachers, mentors, and friends, given at the right time, can help you to heighten your effort, to try harder, to not give up when you get frustrated. And when you work harder, you tend to have more mastery experiences, which are really the heart of efficacy, because they're clear proof that you can do what you set out to do. The last ingredient is your emotional state. When you're stressed out, when you're tired, it can be hard to believe that you'll be able to overcome difficult things. When you're stressed out and tired, everything is complicated and hard, and your confidence in your ability to achieve things is reduced. But fatigue increases stress, and stress facilitates fatigue. Stress, fatigue, and emotional states are all flight safety concerns. By contrast, when you feel good and your mind is clear, sometimes you feel like there's no challenge that you can't conquer. So those are the 4 ingredients of efficacy. Next, I'd like to show you how those 4 ingredients combine to evolve efficacy over time. Now, I want to look at each of these ingredients in a bit of detail, and to focus on how you can use each of these ingredients to build your self-efficacy. And as we go through these, remember that while today you're building yourself as a leader, you'll be helping others build their own self-efficacy and building group efficacy. That is, a group's belief in their ability to achieve what they set out to do. The ingredients remain the same, whether you're applying them to yourself, another person, or a group. Efficacy starts with inspiration. You were inspired by the idea of flying airplanes, and that spark drove you to work hard to become a pilot. I'm guessing that you wouldn't have worked as hard as you have without that inspiration, that feeling you get when you think about flying. Inspiration is the beginning of efficacy because it makes you want to act. Let's do a quick experiment. Do either of these goals look very inspiring? Well, they don't for me. For saving money, I think about not having the things that I want. And working out sounds like work. Okay, how about these goals? Do you get a different feeling? I do. Retiring earlier sounds like fun. I think of all the hobbies that I'd like to do and travel and being healthy and feeling great. Well, who doesn't want that? Well, you save money in order to retire, and you work out in order to be healthy. Tasks aren't usually inspiring in themselves, but results are. You probably aren't inspired by long training hours, waking up early to get to an airport. But if you think about the experience of being up in the clouds, of meeting and working with great people, and maybe even seeing the world, well, I bet that's something that you can be inspired by. So as you take steps to build your efficacy, always start with why. Why do I want to achieve this goal or that goal? What results am I seeking? What do I want to be like? How do I want to feel? By starting with the reasons for the things you want, you can stay inspired, even when things get difficult. Mastery experiences. Achieving things that you set out to do has a huge impact on efficacy because it's proof. It's proof that you can do things. When you accomplish something that you set out to do, it sets off brain chemicals that give you a feeling of joy, which becomes part of your memory. The joy of accomplishment. I bet that when you found out that you'd been accepted for flight training, you felt some accomplishment, like a life dream was starting to come true, and maybe some nervousness and fear. But of course, you don't actually need to fully achieve something to experience mastery. You can feel it every time you achieve a smaller accomplishment, like the first time that you did a crosswind landing or successfully responded to a V1 cut in the simulator. Those things didn't make you a professional pilot, but I'm sure you experienced some satisfaction and a boost in efficacy when you made those accomplishments. Now, to achieve something, you had to decide what it was that you were going to achieve in the first place. In other words, you need goals. A Harvard University study tracked the graduating class of 1979 and found that only 13% of their graduates had specific written goals. Now, the amazing thing about this subgroup was that over time they earned twice as much as the 87% of the class who didn't have specific written goals. Now, I don't want to say that having money equals success in life. There are many ways to be successful, but money is quantifiable, so it's a measure that can be counted. When the people who didn't set goals were asked about why they didn't set goals, they had 3 types of responses. They didn't see the importance of goal setting, or they feared failure. I mean, you can't really fail at something if you never had the goal to succeed in the first place, right? They also said that they didn't know how. My goal right now is to make sure that you know how to set goals that will support your success in life and as a future aviation leader. Before we start, I want you to think of something that you'd like to achieve. How about an aviation skill that you'd like to be better at? It could be flight planning, workload management, radio communications, or maybe a certain maneuver. Just think of one thing that you'd like to improve on and keep it in mind while we talk about high-performance goal setting. SMARTER is an acronym, and each letter stands for a part of a goal that can contribute to it being realized. Saying, I want to be a better cook, or I want to be able to run a marathon isn't really a goal. It's a desire, a dream, it's a wish. The inspiration is important, but if you want to actually have that experience of mastering something, make a SMARTER goal. Here's how. Let's walk through each letter one by one. First is S for specific. What exactly do you want to achieve? Is it a marathon or just run 10K without getting out of breath? The more specifically you define what it is that you're setting out to do, the greater the chance that you'll actually know when you've achieved it. And so, M for measurable is about quantifying the goal. Is it 10K or 5K? Is there an amount of time you want to do it in? Is it on a flat plane or maybe a rugged terrain? Actions are the things that you'll do to reach the goal. So you're getting into planning and thinking in some detail. Maybe you want to follow a schedule or join a club. To have a good chance of succeeding, you want it to be realistic, right? We're talking about mastery experiences and self-efficacy. So this may sound weird, but sometimes you want to aim low and build success before you create more challenging goals or stretch goals. Success breeds success. Learning something new increases your belief that you can learn new things. And overcoming small difficulties will help you overcome larger ones. T is for time-based. You want to set a timeline in your mind that you can work towards. And it has to be reasonable. But having that constraint of knowing that you want to achieve something in a week, a month, or a year is a great way to track progress as you go. Sometimes people just talk about SMART goals and stop there. But I like these last two letters. If you can make something enjoyable, it'll be much more motivating. Maybe running with a friend or having a great playlist of music that you love. And if you can't make the process enjoyable, at least put a reward at the end. Once you've achieved the goal. Maybe it's a new pair of running shoes that are slightly more expensive than you usually pay. Finally, think about resources. What do you need? What will support you in your goal? Maybe you need to download those songs that'll motivate you. Now, as you look back at the elements of SMARTER goals, is it obvious why you have a much better chance of succeeding than if you just thought about your desire to want to run? If you didn't have anything specific and measurable? If you hadn't set out your actions? If you hadn't planned to succeed? So, by thinking through all these things, you're increasing the vivid detail in your mind. And the better you can see something, the more likely you are to actually achieve it. Okay, over to you guys. I talked about SMARTER goals, and now it's your turn to make one. When we started, I asked you to think about something you'd like to get better at. Your backhand in tennis, being a cook or a woodworker, or a particular maneuver in the aircraft. Now, I want you to take 5 minutes and write a SMARTER goal for that one thing that you want to achieve. Okay? Just try it. So you've been inspired, and you've made a clear, powerful, and achievable goal, and it's vivid in your mind's eye because you just made it. But what about tomorrow? What about next week? Will the passion that you felt still be there as you work through the details and overcome obstacles? To get the boost of confidence from achievement, you need to have experiences of achieving things that you set out to do. And to do that, you need to exercise commitment. Now, as a pilot, you already know about commitment, but I want to share with you 2 quick tricks that'll make sure that you stay on track and actually achieve your goal. The trick to maintaining your commitment is making sure that the desire remains as strong and as vivid as on the day that you made the goal. And the way to do this is with your reality simulator. Your brain. Did you know that when you're having a vivid dream or imagining something realistically, your brain patterns look exactly the same as if you were experiencing the real thing. So let's just do this for 1 second. Think about the goal that you just made. You can close your eyes if you like. First, recall the inspiration, the reason you decided on that goal, and how it made you feel. And actually feel it. Don't just remember the feeling. Feel the feeling. Then imagine the things that you're doing to achieve the goal as vividly as possible. What's the first action that you're taking to move you towards that goal? Imagine that you're actually doing it and really see it like you're watching it on a high-definition video. Okay, what's the next action? Again, see it vividly. Now, for time's sake, let's skip to the end, and now you've accomplished that goal. How does it make you feel? Again, really feel it. Bet it feels good. Okay, now one obvious reason that this works is that just as you train in a flight simulator, this kind of visualization helps you experience things realistically. It's mental rehearsal, and it lets you think through your actions again. You may make realizations that you hadn't thought of before, so it adds an element of problem solving. And you're learning as you go through the visualization. Your brain is actually learning how to accomplish the goal. And finally, let's not forget that it can remind you of the feeling of inspiration that got you started in the first place. And the more you do this, the more likely you are to take actions that will actually support the goal. Hopefully, you've already experienced the positive side of social persuasion, like when an instructor encourages you when you're feeling frustrated, giving helpful tips and driving you to keep trying. The benefit to self-efficacy is that social persuasion can help the person being persuaded to stick with something and expend more effort and ultimately have a successful mastery experience. Now, since the point of social persuasion is to encourage that person being persuaded to either increase or focus their effort so that they can have that mastery experience, you might consider asking for that input. For instance, from an instructor, you could simply ask for help, asking for guidance by saying things like, "How do you suggest I do this?" And also, the time that we need that social persuasion is when we're feeling stressed out or discouraged. And it's okay to admit this. Just say, "I have to be honest, I'm feeling stressed out about this," or "I'm just not getting this." This is a cue to your instructors that you need guidance and encouragement. Don't be shy. This is all about your learning, and you aren't expected to be a pro at everything. I want you to remember for a second the last time that you felt stressed out. Maybe you felt tightness in your chest or throat, or a feeling of tension in your forehead. You may have had trouble concentrating. Maybe your thoughts were racing, and maybe you were engaging in negative self-talk, either imagining a negative outcome or beating yourself up. Negative emotional states like stress and anxiety can create a feeling that you're vulnerable to making mistakes, to missing details, to not being aware enough or strong enough to accomplish things. So it can have a huge effect on your self-efficacy. The good news is that the opposite is also true. Having your stress and emotions well controlled can help you achieve high performance. Here are some of the techniques that professional pilots use to manage their stress. The first one is obvious. Getting enough sleep and staying physically fit is one of the easiest things that you can do to control stress. When you're tired and run down, you believe, rightly so, that you have a greater chance of making mistakes. It reduces your belief in your ability to succeed. So make sleep management, exercise, and a good diet part of your professional stress management program. Next, a simple trick. People who work at places like Google, smart people, are all taught how to clear their minds when they feel stressed. And the simplest way to do this is to simply take a breath while thinking of nothing. Just one breath helps. Try it. Ready? And you let it go. So when you feel your stress levels going up, be sure to take a breath. When distracting thoughts slip into your head, practice compartmentalization. It's the art of strategically ignoring things. Everyone has worries. A sick family member, a fight with a friend. Whatever your worries are, make a deal with yourself. And just say, I'm going to deal with this later. You don't want to be distracted during takeoff, landing, or really at any time during the flight. But you can lock these thoughts up, knowing that when you land, you can unlock the box and deal with the issues. Finally, watch what you say to yourself, your self-talk. It can have a big impact on how you feel and act. If it's negative, stop it. Substitute negative messages with positive messages. So you could say to yourself, I'm a professional. I'm committed to doing my best, as an example. Together, these 4 methods can help you control stressful and negative emotions and help you stay focused on your job. Here's a quick story from an experienced pilot talking about how their sense of efficacy grew over time.
I guess my inspiration was my father. I watched Dad go to work and come home from work as an airline pilot. Oftentimes went to the airport to fly from Honolulu to the various islands in the Hawaiian chain, and got to stick my nose up into the cockpit and say hello to the pilots, all of course whom knew my father. Was just in awe of what their job entailed, and eventually expressed an interest to go on a flight with Dad. And he took me up in a little interstate cadet early in the morning when the winds were calm, and he could be assured that I would have a pleasant flight. The noise, the terrific views out the plexiglass windows of this interstate cadet as we bounced along the shoreline of Oahu and flying amongst the clouds, it was just a textbook inspirational experience. Later on, he took me up in a Convair, and in fact, he even let me sit in the seat and manipulate the controls, and it was just a thrill to think that I was a 17-year-old teenager at the controls of a large airplane and found it exhilarating, and the fact that at his mentoring was able to control airspeed and altitude and heading to some degree, and it was a very pleasant experience. And later on that year, in my junior year in high school, I asked if I could get a private pilot's license, and there it began.
Okay, we're done. But before we leave, let's review the 4 main ingredients of self-efficacy. For each of these, I want you to answer 2 quick questions. Why are each of these an ingredient? How do they actually contribute to self-efficacy? And then how? What's one technique you can use to take advantage of this ingredient and help add it to your self-efficacy?